All right, guys, so the Wizard X220 V2 has shown up, and I'm actually going to do a little bit more in-depth videos on this particular model compared to a lot of other ones that I've done, because I have seen some complaints in the past from various viewers, that I didn't really cover the previous versions of this in very much detail. So this is going to be the first of a series of videos. This one's just going to be an overview of what's in the box and what I think of the improvements that have been made in the version 2. I'm kind of thinking this is an important product, not so much because it's necessarily the best for a beginner, as the box here says, first choice for beginners. It's because a lot of beginners get into FPV with something like this, and typically if you do like a Google search, for whatever reason the Eachine Wizard pops up pretty high up in the search list for a lot of people. And if there's someone that doesn't know anything about FPV, they want to get into FPV, they tend to see this first and are interested in getting it, and typically that's how they start in the FPV hobby, is with something like this. And mainly it's because I think it's mostly price driven. It's a fairly affordable product to get into the hobby, and while it's not the quote unquote the best out there, it can get you started, for a decent price. And so that's why I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this particular model, because I know that there's going to be people down the road that will be seeing this, buy it, get into the hobby, and maybe they're going to run into some problems. We'll see. I don't know what there might be. I'm just speculating. And they may want some answers to some of their questions. And so I'll try and answer that. And this one here, basically, they're trying to catch up on the spec war that's out there with all the, basically all the drones of bind and flies. There's a lot of competition now compared to when the original Wizard version 1 came out. Back then, not a lot of bind and flies. Now there's a lot on the market. So, how does this compare competitively to a lot of the other offerings out there that you could potentially buy? Perhaps not as easily found or searched on Google, but maybe I can sort of help answer that. Now, if you have already bought this, or if you're considering buying this, you may want to wait until the other videos come out after I've actually flown this and everything. I'm just going to give you sort of my initial impressions on this in this video, because I do know that they made both a spec upgrade and also made some durability changes. So we're going to take a look at all that. So there's two versions of this currently. There's one with a FlySky radio and receiver already built into it. So if you don't have a radio and you want something that's already kind of pre-bound and all you need are some goggles, then I'll link that down in the description below. I'm going to have a different video next, not in this one, but later, on how to set this up. I was considering setting this up with the components that come out of the Eachine Novice 4, which is going to be the Radiomaster TX12 and the Eachine EV800DM goggles. So those are some pretty common beginner parts, and I think that might be the most appropriate parts to kind of go with. Maybe if you bought the Eachine Novice 4 and you want to get a second quad, this might be not a bad choice to get as a bind and fly to the Eachine Novice controller and goggles. Of course, you have to add a receiver to that, so that'll be part of that other video, the setup video. Now, also, the flight controller in this one here is DJI ready, so it has a 9-volt 2-amp voltage regulator on it, so you can wire this up to like a Vista unit, or perhaps even an Air unit. I think a Vista unit would probably fit better. So if you're thinking about getting this and you want to do DJI, or maybe start off on analog and then go DJI later with this model, and you'd like to have a video on that, do let me know down in the comments below. At any point in time you're watching this video, let me know. And if I have enough interest in that, if I have this model, then I will consider possibly doing an upgrade. It should be fairly easy. You just replace the camera, add the Vista, and I think it's just a plug on the flight controller. It should be literally like a 10-minute job, I think. But if you want a video on that, let me know if they're interested in that as well. But let's set the drone aside for now. Here's the box that comes in. It's pretty minimal packaging for this is a plug and play because it doesn't come with a receiver. You do get this GoPro mount. It's for a Hero 6 or Hero 7. It doesn't work with the Hero 8 or 9, it's too big. You do get these Racer Star props, 3-bladed, not sure what the pitch is. Pretty typical polycarbonate. I don't really like Racer Star's prop design too much, but you know, this is a first timer setup, so probably isn't going to matter too much in terms of for beginners. You get a standard Eachine sticker set. You get the carbon fiber wrench. This is for putting your props on, the prop nuts here. And I've actually already installed the prop nuts. They came in a little bag. I put those on, and then the antenna also came in a little bag. Also stuck that on as well. And for you beginners, never power up your quad without the antenna already attached. Otherwise, you'll fry the video transmitter. Important note, important tip. You get this sticky pad. I think it's for the battery area here in the front. I'm not exactly sure. Set of zip ties for securing wires. You get extra set of screws, and I think some of these longer ones, maybe are spares or possibly for the GoPro mount, because you'll have to put the GoPro mount here like this. And I took the lens cover off of the camera already. You get these foam feet, which is actually a throwback to the old design. As you can see in the photo here, you see the foam feet just hanging in the air. They're kind of useless in this new design. I'm not sure why they bothered to include them or install them in the picture, because they come with these TPU printed landing feet. So you're actually landing on those, and the foam doesn't do anything at all. So no reason why they should include these, but they're just a throwback to the old design. Maybe that's why they decided to include those. All right, so take a closer look at the drone. So the biggest thing that they kind of also carried over from the old design is the individual ESCs. The old design had 20 amp ESCs, and now they're going up to, I think, a 30 amp. And for the most part, 30 amp is not a big deal for a 5-inch, especially for this motor size here. They've obviously boosted up the motor size. We're going now to a 2207, 25, 50 kV motor. So obviously your 4S battery is the intended battery for this. So 30 amps, you know, while they have done a good job of making that an improvement there, it's not necessarily that great considering it's a 2207 motor, because I think a lot of the high-end, not even high-end, even mid-range bind and flies are going to be coming with 40, 45, even 50 amp ESCs, and maybe even 32-bit ESCs. So this is only BLES. Obviously, you're not going to be winning any races with this one, or even trying to win. Actually, this is not even really a racer. This is like for freestyle. So, you know, 30 amps might be enough, but you know, we'll see when we do the final testing. Now, the camera here is a Foxeer Aero Micro Pro. So good camera. One of one of the best cameras that were out there for the longest time in terms of on the analog side. I think on the Cadix side, that the Bertel is probably also a very good camera as well. But I think the Foxeer comes in at a better budget price. That's why they went with this one. And I believe the sensor on this one is also old school. I think it's got the old CCD sensor on here. So very good latency in terms of the camera sensor. Again, with the individual ESCs, we got the PDB board, you know, so this is something that isn't used anymore in a lot of 5-inch bind and flies. Usually the ESCs are 4-in-1 here, so you, instead of 4 individual ESCs and a PDB board, you get a 4-in-1 ESC board here instead. But this is where all the power is routed through here to the ESCs and the motors, and also from the battery lead. The flight controller, as I mentioned, is also upgraded from an F3 to an F4. It's an F4.5 target. It's got a 5-volt 3-amp regulator and a 9-volt 2-amp regulator, so it can all work with a DJI. It has plenty of UARTs. And then the video transmitter also upgraded. I think the old one only went to like 200. Now this one goes up to 600. Obviously power switchable, smart audio capable, all that. And you got, as I mentioned, the analog camera. And then the VTX is sitting on top of the stack here in this 3-board stack. And then you have a little SMA connector coming out here to the antenna, and I think the antenna is also an improvement over the old one. We got the Lollipop 3. So we should have pretty good video performance, and this is in a nice little TPU mount here in the back for the antenna. Should be fairly good and hold up in a lot of crashes. And then they have this ability to add a crossfire antenna here in the back if you wanted to go that route. They do have the old school here sort of servo connector for your receiver connection. I'll cover that in the next video on how to set this up. But basically this wire comes in through here where the battery lead goes, and it is on the flight controller right there. My camera will focus. It's a little plug right there. I did search around for instructions on this. There didn't come with any instructions inside the box. Maybe there'll be some online as to how to wire up this flight controller, but that'll be in the setup video. I'll look for that. And if you have any questions, of course, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll try and answer that in the next video when I go over the setup of this whole quad. USB Type-C for the USB port instead of micro USB, so obviously that's another upgrade. Now, looking at the overall frame and construction of this, I think that they've done a good job at addressing a lot of the shortcomings of the the V1. That one had some problems with some weaker arms. I think they upgraded the arms to 5mm now from 4mm. Got not a lot of cutouts here, so overall should be very strong. Obviously every crash is different, so you never know for sure how it'll survive in a really hard crash. But they did do a lot of things to address the durability concerns. A fairly beefy top plate and all these sandwich plates. Like this is usually not as beefy as this, but I see that they did something here with the design. I'll talk about that here in a second. Motor protection here, so you got the same little plastic piece here on the side to protect the motor bell, because this motor will probably need, that's probably a cheaper motor with a weaker shaft, so any direct hits on the bell are going to probably bend the shaft. So this is more or less necessary for these probably lesser or cheaper motors that are on here. And then you got these nice TPU bumper here on the side to protect the carbon in crashes and also for landing, so that'll protect all the screws on the bottom. And it is definitely is not going to be scraping any of the bottom pieces. And then here in the front, you have another extra piece of carbon. So you have 2 layers of carbon here. So if you do crash, which I think in most cases you're going to crash and it's actually going to hit the arms, but in case any part of the arm or the front here hits a rock or something, a lot of times people will complain this would delaminate with a single layer. So now you have 2 pieces. So they did listen to a lot of the complaints on the first version and addressing them in this newer version. So you can see here they have this interesting design on the top plate, which isn't on the first version. They have this sort of cutout here so that this top plate can be removed by this one screw. So there's another plate underneath here with a press fit nut, and that screw goes into that. And you can kind of, I don't know if my camera's going to focus on that or not, but it's kind of right there. Yeah, it's not focusing. There it is, right up. There it goes. So yeah, there's a little press fit nut under there, and that's how the top plate's held on by that one screw, and then these 2 in the back here, and this whole camera section here remains intact, so you don't have to take that off, and then you have to reassemble it later. And so this will just stay in place. You don't have to mess around with it, which is nice. And plus you can get inside here to the stack without having to remove the GoPro mount as well. The GoPro mount will attach to these 4 screws. Could be a weak point in a crash because it is just one screw right here. So in a very hard crash, if something's pulling on the battery hard enough, it could crack there. There's right now, because it's brand new, it just came out, there's not a lot actually there aren't any spare parts available, but I do know that they'll come out later. I know for the original Wizard V1, there's a ton of spare parts available. Basically the whole frame, all the components, pretty much everything, anything that could possibly break, there's a spare part available for that. So I'm pretty certain that they will have all the spare parts of this one as well, including this battery plate here in case that cracks right here. And that's probably the only place I think that it could possibly break here in this whole section. This front section is pretty tough. I think this is the weak spot right here. But I do like the design because they can just pop that off with these 3 screws, get in there, and again, I'll talk about that in the setup video. You can get in there, swap out components, put in the receiver, whatever, and if you need to solder anything to the flight controller, for example, like a GPS, for example, stuff like that. So yeah, overall, they think they did a good job in terms of addressing a lot of the shortcomings on the original design. How does it compare to a lot of the newer ones, or the modern designs that are out right now? A lot of those are a little bit more expensive. This is coming in around the $160 price point, which is pretty reasonable for what you got here. I think like the Nazgul V5 is coming around $200 for analog. So it's a little bit more, but iFlight motors are going to be a bit better in that case, and their frame is obviously pretty reliable and proven. Making a direct comparison to this and that is a little bit difficult because this has individual ESCs versus that was a 4-in-1 ESC. So it's kind of hard to say apples and oranges wise. You get what you pay for in general. So, if you are in the market for something and in this sort of price range, and if you're willing to spend a little bit more, I would steer you to something like the iFlight Nazgul V5. That's going to probably be better overall. You can get better support from iFlight as well, because this is supported by Banggood, and Banggood support is kind of hit and miss. So yeah, really kind of depends on what you're looking for. Obviously, there's a big community of people that are going to be buying this, or have bought the original Wizard, maybe are upgrading to this one. So there's going to be a lot of pilots that are probably going to fly. So and I do know there's a lot of Facebook groups out there as well that cover this model specifically. So there's in terms of support from the community standpoint, there's probably a lot of people out there that could help you out if you have problems with this model as well. So there's kind of pros and cons all around there in terms of that. But I think that's going to cover it for this first video. Leave me your questions and comments down below as to what else I could cover on this one in future videos. I'm going to definitely do a setup video based on if you bought this as a beginner, and you bought like a basic radio and a basic set of goggles. How do you set this up out of the box once you get this? So I'm going to do that, and then I'll talk a little bit about how the other version with the FlySky radio that already comes with the FlySky radio, how that might work out in terms of comparison of just like setting it up completely out of the box with totally new hardware. I'll talk about that in that video as well. And then, again, if you want some other videos like, conversion to DJI or some other testing, do let me know down in the comments below, and I will take that into consideration for future videos. Okay, so that's going to do it for this one. Stay tuned for the next one on this guy, some point, hopefully within a week or two, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.